right.
All right. Hey, Simon, how's it going?
It's going good. Sunny
Good.
Mexico.
Yeah, perfect. Nice place to be indoors doing a podcast.
What temperature is it there?
It has been crazy. It's been minus today and yesterday were like one. Today's a bit colder, but honestly, since you left, it's been like minus 25, minus 30 every day.
Wow.
It's so bad.
Meanwhile, my windows are wide open. I'm just
Yeah,
loving
I'm
it. I can
so
hear children
jealous.
playing in the street.
Sounds so bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's
All
jump in.
right.
So we're talking a little bit about total cost of ownership today for website and product um, design and development. Like these types of projects typically, at least with us, don't go over budget. I think that's a whole separate topic talking about budget extensions, why projects go over budget. But I think the one thing that a lot of organizations, and I don't blame them, a lot of people in general don't consider going into a lot of these projects is total cost of ownership, um, or why it's even needed in some instances. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a great
today we're
one.
going to talk.
And like we use
Yeah,
that to kick off a project to better understand what potential impact could be for the project. And that's discussed
exactly.
usually after kickoff. But
Yeah, totally.
what's funny, and I'm sure we'll get to it, is that clients usually don't even know what they're spending on certain things like
Oh
hosting
yeah, for sure.
or like that total cost of ownership could be anything, hosting, licensing. Um, I think those are pretty much the two biggest ones. And then there's like time commitment stuff as well that we'll get into.
Yeah, yeah. So um, that's what we're talking about today. I'm Marcello, co-founder of Tennis. We work across product, UX, web, and system level design, usually with mid-market and enterprise teams. And I'm here with Simon, who leads our design operations, and I'm also a founder. So today's episode is really just about the hidden costs of website design and product design. When a client says we're planning a redesign, Simon, what costs do you immediately know that they are not accounting for that are going to have to be considered and discussed like really early on in the process?
Yeah. It's always hosting. Yeah. Like every single project, it's always hosting. And hosting can be a range of different things because you have managed hosts and then self-hosted stuff, or maybe a previous firm is hosting it somewhere in like AWS or Azure. Like, but oftentimes the people we're talking to on that team, they're like, well, I don't know. Let me try to get that number for you. And then they have to actually go through an organizational maze. Maybe it's IT if they have IT. Sometimes they don't know. They have to contact the previous vendor. But hosting that single question is usually about, a week of additional work on the client side to just find out what that is. But that number is so critical because it helps us position our options to recommend them, like where to save money, where to save costs on future hosting setups. Usually they're like grandfathered in.
Yeah, I've got I want to jump into hosting a bit more, but the other one that I think is also unaccounted for all the time is just labor costs. And I think, with hosting, organizations can typically give you an answer with a little bit of due diligence, but with labor costs, it's like people don't even think about it at all. And we've gone through that exercise so many times where, with a current project, working with clients and saying like you're wasting 40, 50 hours a month with a senior level employee, just like trying to wrangle this like rat's nest of technology you have. And that's just a huge cost. It just shouldn't happen. Um,
Yeah.
but
And
going back to
marketing,
hosting, yeah.
oh yeah. I was just going to say, like, marketing tech stacks already are getting so incredibly diverse. We've talked about this
Mm.
so often about marketers becoming technologists. Like you need that technical and design background. And I had a conversation with someone on LinkedIn. Uh, they're like, yeah, at the tail end of my marketing degree, they started teaching us about UX, marketing technologies, hosting, HTML. I was like, wow, like they get it. Whatever program they went to, they really get it.
Yeah. Was that
Because
here in Canada? Was it first in Canada or the US?
I should check. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm curious because that would be interesting. That is super interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And it could be a newer thing, but we just know we worked with marketers before, and some of the stuff's just outside of their wheelhouse, and it's moving so fast. Like the marketing
Mm.
technologies, the go to market stuff, collecting
Oh yeah,
signals,
totally.
automations, and all of that actually feeds into the comment I made earlier, which is licensing. So hosting's the where's the website live in the ether of the internet, but then licensing is, well, what other software tools are you just paying for that connect back to the site? And that's usually a
Hmm.
bigger blind spot. And some people on the team have purchased these things and then not told anyone about it. Some people purchased it, 5 years ago and it's just never been used, but they're still spending. And that's all total cost of ownership.
Hosting is a hosting's a weird one because it's so variable, I find too. And like, why is it that some organizations are paying astronomical amounts for hosting when they shouldn't be? Like we've seen instances like that where people are paying thousands monthly,
Oh yeah.
and then investing in a redesign of the site end up saving significantly on the hosting side, but nothing hugely significant is happening on the actual web or product. It's the same web or product. It's just a redesign of it. But um,
Yeah.
I think people really struggle to wrap their heads around with that, and also sometimes rely on third-party vendors to kind of make recommendations that end up being just horrible recommendations that cost them a lot of money that shouldn't. So,
Yeah.
like, what are the reasons? Why do people end up in that kind of situation?
Well, you actually hit on one already, which is the third party vendors. And what we see with third party vendors is they'll manage the hosting because they're managing multiple sites across
Hmm.
their infrastructure. So the client site is one of many on a server managed by the vendor. So those hosting fees tend to just be buried under a service level agreement, a retainer, but then they're paying thousands of dollars per month for they don't even know what. Is it
I
the vendor
see.
helping them? Is it the hosting fees? That's why sometimes they get back to us. They're like, "Well, we don't know. This lump sum of money just goes out. We don't know how much
Yeah,
of this is hosting, how much of this is retainer because it's just all blended," which is a bad thing to begin with, right? Your hands are
for
tied
sure.
now. So that's one. I'm sure we could go through some real gripes there. And then the other one is just poor implementation of infrastructure. If you're over engineering your infrastructure, scaling too fast, then you
Hmm.
could probably be on the hook for higher fees with AWS. Our recommendation there is to just always start smaller than you think you need. No one's going to wake up and have 10,000 simultaneous users overnight. And if you do,
Hmm.
then hopefully your vendor has figured that out and can scale that stuff relatively effortlessly.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do
Yeah.
you see this playing out differently at mid-market versus enterprise? Or if you even see it playing out differently?
I find that mid market tends to like they don't usually have the IT support needed. And if they do, it's usually
Hmm.
a smaller team that's supporting bigger and bigger initiatives across the organization. And they've just gotten folded into the conversation when they have to meet the vendor who's doing the website or the product. And they help validate whether or not the hosting and licensing is all in compliance. But at
Hmm.
the
That makes
enterprise
sense.
level, I find that they're really dialed in. Like we
Yeah,
can ask them questions and, we'll get
yeah,
things back immediately. We can even ask questions to the marketing team. They're like, well, you know what? We're not going to move to Azure. Like we're exclusively on AWS. We use AWS services, credits, all that stuff. We would never move.
yeah. Yeah, there's
So
less
I find that,
wearing multiple hats, more dedicated resources, more obviously more people. So you've got way more people that are dedicated to like IT infrastructure and stuff like that too,
yeah. And I think there's a
and higher
trickle down effect.
expectations maybe.
Definitely higher expectations. Um, I think that because of their scale, there's this trickle down effect too with IT having to train everyone and
Yeah.
socialize any technology changes. So they're like, well, we're moving to Microsoft 360. So then they deploy a whole training program at the enterprise level. So when you meet with marketing, they tend to
Yeah.
have a lot of those answers for you.
True.
Mid market, it's more like someone sold you Microsoft 360, like you're doing it. There's a guy you can call at Microsoft who's sometimes there, sometimes not there. Um, is that where you want to host the website? You don't know. No one knows.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why support's so important with the right
Yeah.
vendor. So what's
Yeah.
kind of like an approach that companies should take when they're thinking about, I mean, I have opinions on this as well, because when companies are putting together scope of work brief, we've done an entire episode on, what a proper brief and what a proper approach to sourcing this type of work looks like. What do you think they should put together or at least consider? One thing that I never, ever, ever see, I honestly think it's probably like 100% of 100% of the time, is there's never any description of hosting costs, management costs, like
Oh yeah, that's so true.
never. I've never seen a request for project or anyone coming to the table with a brief, including what does it just cost me to run this website. It's just so interesting to me that I still feel like a bit of a side tangent, but I still feel like the way organizations view a website is still so qualitative and still so much of a like creative pursuit versus a quantitative tool that costs money and can return on that investment, whether it's financially or like whatever metrics you're trying to achieve through marketing. But this is just a simple example of that. It's like no one, oftentimes people just, it's like gone. The cost is committed to, and then they start paying it, and it's just erased from everyone's collective memory.
I know, yeah. There's no like centralized governance for that sort of information.
It's not
So
even
they're
easy
always
to
redoing it.
reference most of the time, right? It's like when you ask the question, it's like, oh, I have to parse through some estimates. I have to talk to someone. I have to, like you said, usually it's like a lump sum. Um, so like the referencing of that cost is like non-existent too.
No. And usually when we ask it, some clients just say, talk to our previous vendor. And then
Yeah,
talking to
totally.
them is usually like a struggle because they're like, okay, well, it's pretty clear we're getting replaced. We're going to lose this retainer. So they tend to not cooperate as well, which is a weird thing. Um,
Anyways, back to
but
the question.
I
So
think
planning.
I think you're right though. Like I just want to build on that. Like, all of the
Mhm.
RFPs, usually it's a single line that just says hosting. Like,
As a requirement, not like this is how much we're paying.
yeah, yeah. And but even hosting is a requirement. Like, okay, hosting for what? For how many users? For how much
Yeah.
scale? Like, ideally, you're putting together an RFP that you're coming in with a little bit more detail. Even, hey, we're currently hosted on AWS. We are open to alternative hosting infrastructure,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But I only ever see hosting must be estimated and included. And first
Yeah.
off, how are we even doing that in an RFP?
Or it's not mentioned at all often.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like, like if it's not an RP and it's a quoting opportunity with an organization, it's like it's just never brought up unless we bring it up and ask like, okay, what's the hosting situation? How much are you paying, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Oh, that's good. What was the
So
question again?
just like total cost of ownership, what should be considered when you put together a brief or something? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like figure out how much you're paying, figure out how much
Yeah,
of it is support versus hosting, figure out how much the website's costing you. Like that's another thing no one ever includes. We always ask that question, but how much you've got pain points, but how much time waste are those pain points connected to? Like how much is it actually costing you? And then you can put together a business case, a really good, strong business case for investing in a website or product and when the return's going to
yeah,
be and all that.
yeah. I think some of the better RFPs we've seen, they include like at least a list of the licensing. That would be my answer to your question is
Hmm.
oftentimes they don't include things like Mailchimp or transactional
Oh
email
yeah,
servers.
yeah,
Um, yeah, what's a CRM that's usually integrated? HubSpot, right?
yeah.
They don't
There's
mention
yeah.
any of these things, and then they come up later in the project once we start digging a bit deeper. And then it turns out, surprise, that was supposed to be part of the scope of work. So I think that's where we do differentiate ourselves a bit is we ask those questions up front more regularly, even during the sales process.
Mhm.
It does drag things out, unfortunately, sometimes. Like it pushes the sales cycle, but it's just an important question. What has
Yeah,
to
totally.
integrate? What are you using? Do you want to swap anything out? And I think those are
How
usually
much is it
missed.
costing you? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
Cool.
I've never to
All
this
right.
day seen costs
Oh yeah,
in
never.
that. But
Yeah.
um
All right. Well,
I got
let's.
I got one
Yeah.
for you actually.
Okay. Okay.
Um so this one's interesting because I think it's a bit cultural, but just from a business perspective, why do you think this stuff is consistently missed during
I think.
like the planning process or the
Well,
RFP
well,
creation process?
I think for large organizations, the website's a really small line item on their cost. Um, Again, these are all assumptions. I don't actually know the
Hmm.
answer, but we should ask that question for sure more. I think that I think it's a couple things. I think like the website cost for fairly large organizations is sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's a small line item on a list of costs, and so it's kind of like you know some of the software, the third party software we didn't even we don't there was a point in time where we just paid for stuff, and then we started putting together an actual tracker and making it easier for ourselves to be able to track all that stuff. So I think it's a small line item amongst a bazillion small line items. So depending on how an organization is actually tracking or not, it's definitely not probably done with the marketers. It's probably done at accounting if they have internal accounting teams. And then so it's just like harder to access that information.
Yeah.
Um, that's one
That's
thing. And
so
then I think the other,
interesting. Just because,
I mean,
like,
I'm
you're
just
right.
yeah,
No, no, I think you're right though, because I'm even thinking of us from an accounting perspective. Like, they'll send us something at the end of the month. They're like, "What was this?" We tell them what it was, and then we never hear about it again. It's just
yeah,
coming off the card, and like you said,
yeah,
we built a program for managing that. But
yeah,
if it's accounting that's handling the costs, they're just seeing the money go out. They're doing their job. They are not accountable for that. So
yeah.
whoever made
I
the
think there's a
decision,
yeah. I think there's a
yeah,
little bit of overlap because like there is still a budget that needs to be managed by a marketing department, right? So,
yeah,
but again, it's such a small item on the budget that it's like it just happens. And then the other one is I think that again, like we've talked about this a lot, but there's a knowledge gap between us and our clients, and it's a huge knowledge gap, technical knowledge gap. And I think that I've also seen scenarios where it's a large item on the budget list, but the client is just like, they told me it costs this much. I just accepted that it costs this much. Like, what am I don't know. I don't know anything about AWS hosting, like technical support. So I just pay this astronomical amount and just think it's expensive, but feel like it is what it is, right? But it's not. And then we see those scenarios and it's like mind blowing. Like we have literally had situations where we hear the hosting costs and we're like, what? What? That just doesn't make any sense that you'd be paying that much for a marketing website.
yeah,
But again, like they just don't know. So
no,
I think there's those two things. And then I think like a website, this one's cultural probably, but depending on the organization and how aggressive you're trying to market and sell, a website is a tool for some companies and it's not a tool for other companies. It's just a sort of interaction point, which I think is like just a cultural attitude within some organizations. And so it's sort of like the set it and forget it mentality, right? Like you've got the website and it's just a face. lives. We don't do anything with it. We don't manage the analytics. We don't look at conversions. We don't. It's not a pipeline driver for us. It's not a marketing driver for us. We've got all these other things going on, so we just pay for it and leave it. And eventually
Hmm.
we'll have to change it because it's a bad brand representation. Whereas other companies, if they have metrics and they have aggressive targets and they're already thinking about conversion and analytics and all that kind of stuff, then cost matters a lot more. So again, these are all assumptions, but those are kind of like those are assumptions based on what I've seen, heard.
Yeah.
That might be
No, it's
slightly
yeah,
off.
that
Who
makes
knows?
sense. Yeah.
But it's a good question to start asking clients, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it all adds up. Um,
Um, yes.
yeah. I think that we also wanted to talk a bit about like incremental delivery and just
Let's
like
do that on a. I want to do that on a separate one because I think that's a huge. It's part of a larger topic. I think.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's definitely taking those baby steps towards things I think is important rather than just doing
Sure.
everything all in one go, which is
Yeah.
why we ask those questions up front. I think that's just part of the incremental
Yeah. True.
delivery piece.
Yeah.
Even if it is a bigger conversation, I think it still
Yeah.
has quite a lot of bearing here.
Yeah.
Um, with the think
Yeah.
phase, you've got that's all asking these quantitative and qualitative questions. What are you spending? What are you spending it on? What's the use case for this? Do you need it? How did this even happen? Was it someone who set this up and then isn't in the organization anymore? So that little like Q&A period
Yeah.
that's part of our
Right.
workshops allows us to take that information back and then slowly build out a program rather than just taking an RFP at face value.
Yeah. Totally. That's true. Incremental steps, which means you can analyze things a little bit deeper
Yeah,
and get feedback. All right.
exactly.
Well, we talked about opportunity cost. We talked a little bit about some of the cultural reasons why cost is considered differently in different organizations. What is a hard truth to hear about total cost of ownership?
You're probably spending more than you think. That's like
More
currently
than you think or more than you should?
more than you should and probably more than you think. Like I think that's
Yeah,
the problem is it's
definitely more than you think.
the costs are a blind spot. So with our when we do redesigns, when we have those numbers, we're trying to target something that's decreasing those costs, right?
Hmm.
And if
Yeah.
you're matching those costs or increasing those costs, there better be a really good reason for it. I'll give you a quick example. Like, we're big on the managed hosting approach because managed hosting means you don't need a technology partner to go in and update all the security and do the classic server patches, like the technical retainer stuff, right? But
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
managed service covers all of that. So there's peace of mind, but it usually comes at a premium cost. So you might not save money, but you actually de-risk your infrastructure and you have peace of mind by paying a bit more. Usually a little bit more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So yeah, I'd say the
Okay.
hard truth for me is just like, yeah, you're probably paying more than you should, more than you would imagine.
Great. It's a good one. All right. Should we call it there?
All right, let's call it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye,
See
everyone.
ya.
Enjoy. Okay. Bye.
Bye.